fifth part of lesson 79. We continue to look at the great players, their idiosyncrasies, and what we can learn from them. In Alex Hayes' book, The Mechanics of Golf, that he illustrated, he's got this lovely picture of the great Johnny Miller. And this picture is blown up on the wall of my teaching academy here in Milton Keynes. Now, I lived through this era. This is the mid-70s. He won the Open at Birkdale in '76 when Seve Ballesteros broke through as a teenager. So these wide flared trousers with the big checks and the big collars. And if you know Johnny Miller from commentary, you know he's still got the hair. And you can see that time has not been kind to me. In fact, it took me down the alley and beat the crap out of me. But I'm still smiling. So what can we learn from Johnny Miller? Well, we can learn that hitting the ball flat out hard is not necessarily a bad thing. And when Johnny Miller hit the ball, he was literally at impact, his heels were off the ground. There was so much speed and aggression in the swing that he rose up on his toes. That's a characteristic you see on the ladies' tours around the world. Some of the great female players are on tiptoes at impact as it rises up. Now, Johnny Miller did that, and he was probably the first player to not just shoot in the 60s, but to shoot low to mid-60s. And in fact, in I think 72 and 73, he came out and he won the first 3 tournaments of the year on 2 consecutive years. And he went on to win the US Open at Oakmont, shooting 63 in the final round. So he was the first person to break the mental barrier. You know, high 60s was always good, would win tournaments, but to go into the mid to low 60s was unprecedented, and Miller did it. So I called it Johnny Wind Miller, possibly, a great wind player. He could control the ball. But I want to show you that while the swing was volatile and a bit unusual on tiptoes at impact, because of that aggression and commitment to the shot, he was an incredibly accurate iron player. So let me take you to the screen and show you his swing. So talking about the ferocity of Johnny Miller's swing, he was so aggressive coming through that he rose up onto his toes through impact. Hit the ball incredibly hard. Alex Hay gave me this sort of picture or analogy. If you imagine me holding some balloons in my hand, they're blowing in the breeze and they're waving and they're all over the place. So a backswing can be like that. It can be willowy and it can change direction, have lots of movement. But when you run with the balloons and you run, the strings straighten. So Alex would say that a player was willowy and had creative movement up here. It was like balloons blowing in the wind. But the commitment to drive the ball through towards the target, it was like pulling the strings straight and all came together. So when you look at a name and dart of Jim Furyk, you're looking at somebody with all loose balloon strings, but the desire to hit the shot brings them back to orthodoxy. Johnny Miller absolutely ripped it, had no fear, and I believe he was one of the first to demonstrate to us that our most powerful shots are our most accurate. When we back off shots, then the ball goes left and right. The great players know to commit to the shot. They know that their strongest shot will also be their most accurate. Now, in this particular instance, I just want you to watch my left heel and my feet impact. I'm going to demonstrate Johnny Miller's swing as close as I can get to it, but I just want you to watch my legs and my knees particularly. Here we go. Now I'm happy about that because I'm on the 17th tee at Carnoustie, one of the toughest tee shots, and I've hit the ball 240 yards, demonstrating the heels lifting. So Simon, if you could put a slow-mo of that, it would be great. If you could just show everybody my swing so they have time to watch my heels rising. As I said earlier, there are lots of female players even now who have that same characteristic. It may not appear in the short to mid irons, but once they get to the fairwoods and the driver, being on tiptoes at impact, and this idea of using the ground, I mean, it's just a catchphrase. That's a bit like saying a boat uses water. Well, specialist subject, the flippant obvious. We don't really use the ground. We use our body, hands and club. We just interact with the ground. This is inanimate, it doesn't move. So the idea of using the ground to me is nonsense. And when you see a player jumping and they're almost if they had pressure pads at impact, there'd almost be no pressure in the pressure pads. They're not sitting down and going this way, they're going that way. And because they're going that way, all those loose strings pull together and they're awesome at impact, which is the point of time that really matters in golf. When I first came to Alex Hay, I had a jumping left leg. And I've got my photograph, my first lesson with Alex. I was a la Johnny Miller. I was airborne at impact. And Alex gave me a drill. He gave me the half swing drill, and he said, if you hit shots, half shots, your knees will stay constant. Anyway, I worked on that for a winter, and I came back to him in the spring, and he said, how you doing, Luther? I said, I'm doing fine, Alex. I said, but just occasionally wind off the left, an adverse camber dog leg, I still block it right with a fade. He goes, I'm not sure I can fix that. Well, he saw my face fall. He's the best player in the country. I'm giving him £40 in 1978 that I haven't got. I've ridden for 5 hours from Wales to get this lesson, and I was lucky to get 35 minutes out of him because it was freezing cold. And he saw all that in my look. He said, look, son, he said, you've ingrained that characteristic, or that fault, if you want to call it such, of the jumping left heel, 500 shots a day for 7 years. He said, if we become obsessed about it, it will never heal. He said, we must impose the good over the bad. So he said, if you'll just hit me half shots from here to here and keep the knee flex constant. So I worked on that. I worked on the half shot, and over the next 2 or 3 years, and just occasionally, I'd still jump at one and I'd block it, but at least it didn't frustrate me because I knew where it came from. It was the ghost of Christmas past. I'm going to ignore him, and I'm going to think about the next shot, and the next shot I'm going to impose the new over the old. And that's so true of golf coaching. Don't avoid a fault, foster the new. The new will always overpower the bad. Okay, let me just give you one more. I'll give you my Johnny Miller type swing. Watch my left heel as I hit it. See, it jumped back. And yeah, I've hit a very, very effective shot. Not very long, as you can see. I've got the cashmere insert, but I drilled the ball with draw, even though my feet were jumping at it. Let me now demonstrate the half shot, or as Alex Hay would call it, the carpet beating shot. This is me just making a swing of the Y shape to here, Y shape through. Using the Y shape fosters constant knee flex. So this won't go very far, but I'm going to give you half a swing back and through. My knees will stay flexed throughout. You can see the finish. I'm still on a bent left knee. So let's recap. Johnny Miller was one of the most dominant players of the early to mid-70s. An incredible golfer. He hit the ball as hard as anybody's ever hit it, and his feet, he was almost airborne at the moment of impact, but it worked for him. And what I'd like you to get from this is the conviction of the shot will overpower frailties in the swing. So even though Johnny Miller was airborne at impact, the desire to drive that ball across, through towards the target overpowered any idiosyncrasies, any weaknesses. In other words, that bunch of balloons that were all waving in the wind, as you pull the strings, it all comes back into line. And that's what Miller did. He set up, he created maximum power, and he launched it. He launched it to the point that he was almost airborne, but his record shows it worked for him.